Thomas Aquinas was born around 1225 at Roccaseca in southern Italy, about midway between Rome and Naples. He was born in the county of Aquino, hence his name, Aquinas, is a place name, Thomas from or of Aquino. His parents had 9 children, 4 boys and 5 girls, and Thomas was the youngest son, which meant, according to the custom of the day, that he was bound for a career, for a life in the church. Around 1230, at the ripe young age of 5, his parents sent him as an oblate, an offering, a child offering, to the very well established and very wealthy Benedictine house of Monte Cassino, where he spent the next decade or so of his life receiving elementary education and formation in monastic training. It was around 1239 then that he was sent to Naples for more advanced education in the liberal arts. And it was here that he first came in contact with the Dominican order. Let me just say a little bit about the Dominican order. Thomas took the Dominican habit, officially became a Dominican in 1244. And at this time, the Dominican order was a relatively new order. It had just been established by St. Dominic around 1210 in the south of France. And it was an order whose mission was first preaching, and secondly, the care of souls, and particularly the hearing of confessions. And it became, from its very, very first beginnings, theological education was central to that goal of preaching and of hearing confessions. And this is because that the south of France in the early 13th century was really a stronghold of the Cathar or Albigensian heresy. Now, Catharism or Albigensian heresy was, you can think of it as Manichaeism warmed over in the Middle Ages. It was a dualist heresy according to which all matter, everything on the earth, including humans, all matter is evil, and only spiritual realities are good. So St. Dominic knew, and of course someone like Thomas Aquinas was well aware, that this view of the world, just as it had done in Manichaeism for Augustine, presented a tremendous threat to the Catholic Christian notion of the goodness of all of material creation, going back to Genesis 1, which says quite clearly that God created this and that on each particular day, and said at the end of each day it was good, and at the end of the 6th day said it was indeed very good. So, so one of the things that we want to bear in mind in thinking about Aquinas and his theology are all the ways in which he very much affirms the goodness of the created order and the goodness of the human person. And you see this primarily through his understanding of the sacraments and the fact that it was good and indeed necessary that God come to us for our salvation through the material things of creation. And this was quite clearly seen for Thomas and for other theologians in the fact that God became incarnate. So in 1244, Thomas became a Dominican. In 1245, 1 year after Thomas became a Dominican, the order sent him to Paris to continue his training in theology and philosophy, and it was here that Thomas became a student of Albert the Great, Albertus Magnus, who was a great theologian and philosopher and scientist in his own right, in fact. In the period 1252 to 1256, Thomas Aquinas lectured formally on the sentences of Peter Lombard and produced a formal commentary on it, as did all scholastic theologians from the early 13th century right through until the Reformation. Now, just a word on the sentences of Peter Lombard. The sentences were divided into 4 books, And the synthesis is itself, a sentence in medieval scholasticism is merely an authoritative statement. So Peter Lombard gathered all of these authoritative statements on all of the major topics and questions of theology and divided them into 4 books. So book 1 consists of questions on God. God is Trinity. Book 2 consists of questions and authorities on creation. Book 3 is on the incarnation and on the virtues. And book 4 is on the sacraments and on the last things, eschatology. So the commentary, lecturing on the sentences and producing a commentary on the sentences, was in medieval scholasticism the equivalent of the modern doctoral dissertation. It was the final necessary stage in the burgeoning theologian's training in theology, after which he would be licensed as a master, as an official teacher of theology, and would usually take up a post in the faculty which had trained him. These commentaries on the sentences, which were produced by scholastic theologians such as Thomas and Bonaventure and John Duns Scotus, are really massive, massive works. And just to give you one example, in the case of Thomas Aquinas, in modern Latin edition, and most of these commentaries have not been, at least not totally, translated into English, but in modern Latin edition, the sentences commentary of Thomas Aquinas, the scriptum, it's called, the writing on the sentences, runs to about 5,000 pages. So just a massive work. Thomas was licensed as a theological master and taught at the University of Paris for the first time between 1256 and 1259. And this is called the First Paris Regency. The Master of Theology was called the Regent Master or the Reigning Master of Theology. And at Paris, it should be noted that at any given time there were one or two chairs in theology that were to be held by Dominicans and Franciscans as well. And then there were some secular chairs of theology as well. So Thomas filled one of these Dominican chairs in theology. In 1259, the Dominican order called Thomas back to Italy to teach at its houses of study, or studia, where they trained the friars, at Orvieto and at Rome. So Thomas spends the rest of his adult life going back and forth from Italy, where he's teaching in the Dominican houses of study, and Paris, where he's teaching at the university. So again, he does what he does as a master of theology, even at the University of Paris, certainly as a teacher, as a master of the sacred page. He does it all at the service of the Dominican order. In the early 1260s, Thomas is writing his less well-known Summa, the Summa contra Gentiles, the Summa against the peoples, against the nations. And scholars sort of argue about what this means, who is the intended audience. This work is also entitled The Book of the Truth of the Catholic Faith Against the Errors of Unbelievers. So most scholars will say, well, look, this certainly situates it in this early Dominican context of countering Albigensian or Cathar dualistic notions of the cosmos. So in 1268 to 72, Thomas goes back to the University of Paris for his second period of teaching there, which is known as his Second Paris Regency. In 1272, I should say, yes, in 1272, he returns to Italy, to Naples, where he continues work on his Summa of Theology, which is his, what we know as his great masterpiece of theology, which he began writing in 1266. And at the very same time, actually, the early 1270s, he's also writing 12 commentaries on 12 of Aristotle's works. So this is important to bear in mind, too, in trying to understand the highly philosophical and Aristotelian nature of Thomas's thought and of Thomas's work, particularly in the Summa of Theology. So I should say a word here about Aristotle, perhaps. Beginning in the middle of the 12th century, some very, very important works, most of the works of Aristotle, were translated into Latin for the very first time. So in the context of scholasticism, about which we will speak, in the context of scholasticism, the authority of the works of Aristotle and of the works themselves, Aristotle's thinking on various things, physics, metaphysics, on the soul, for example, become very, very important authorities that need to be integrated into scholarly understanding, and in particular in understanding of theology, because theology is concerned not only with truths about God, but also truths about particularly the soul, right? Spiritual realities. So too metaphysics, the study of being. So it is because of this massive influx into the Latin West for the very first time, of the works of Aristotle, and of course Aristotle wrote in Greek, but it's because of this massive influx and this new knowledge of Aristotle, which was very exciting for most theologians in the medieval West. It is because of this that there is a need that arises for reconciling various authorities. Because at times Scripture may say X about the human soul and Aristotle may say Y. But if Aristotle is true, which he may not have been all the time, the scholastics thought, then that knowledge will be